Well, this Valentine's Day will be, unfortunately, unlike that picture, a dark and sad one for a local woman who thought she had found love online.
But what she found instead was an elaborate scam. Sergio Flores.
Martha is a woman in San Diego who did what millions of people do now without a second thought. She opened a dating app, started chatting, and let a digital connection slowly become part of her daily life. According to Martha, the man on the other end presented himself as a San Diego architect, temporarily working overseas in Poland, someone with a believable backstory, and the kind of affectionate, consistent messaging that can make a phone feel like a safe place. Over months, the conversation built into intimacy, trust, and routine. And then, according to Martha, it became a financial pipeline, one that ultimately carried $32,000 out of her life and into the hands of someone she never met. What looks like a romance story on the surface is also a case study in modern digital fraud. Patient social engineering, financial manipulation delivered through everyday apps, and the quiet way a scam can hijack both emotion and judgment before the victim realizes the relationship was never real. According to Martha, she didn't enter online dating looking for trouble or trying to take risks. She entered it the way most users do, as a tool for connection. The platform lowered the friction of meeting someone new, turning introductions into messages, messages into constant contact, and constant contact into the feeling of a relationship without any of the real-world checks that normally come with one. She asked that her real name not be used, and she told NBC7 she hasn't told her family or friends about what happened. According to Martha, the secrecy isn't about the missing money as much as it is about shame, about the emotional reality of caring for someone who never existed the way she believed. That's one of the most overlooked cybersecurity angles in romance fraud. The attack surface isn't just a device or an account. It's a human being, isolated by embarrassment and targeted through their need to be understood. The scam, as Martha describes it, began with a standard pattern in app-based fraud, a low-stakes conversation that takes its time. At first, it was casual, then gradually more intimate and trusting. According to Martha, she saved hundreds of text messages, and the language in them was designed to bond pet names, concern, future-focused warmth. One message she shared reads, "I miss you so much and more. I hope you are looking after yourself." In cybersecurity terms, this is not an accidental style of communication. It's a form of social engineering that builds credibility through repetition and emotional consistency until the victim starts treating the messages as proof of character. Then, according to Martha, the story shifted from romance to crisis. The man claimed he was having trouble accessing his bank account and needed help keeping his business afloat. He didn't frame it like a heist. He framed it like partnership, like a temporary financial bridge requested inside an established relationship. Martha says she sent money multiple times to show she was there for him. That detail matters. This wasn't one dramatic request, it was an escalation. And escalation is how these scams bypass the internal alarms most people do have. In a single shocking ask, a victim might stop and reassess, but in a series of smaller steps, each payment can feel like the logical continuation of the last decision. According to Ali Armason, Executive Director of the Cybercrime Support Network, romance scams are methodical and patient, developing a bond that becomes hard to break. Her framing is important. The first thing to understand is this was a relationship. It was a criminal who was lying the whole time, but it was still a relationship. In digital fraud, that dual reality is the mechanism. The criminal doesn't need sophisticated malware if they can persuade a victim to voluntarily move money. They don't need to break encryption if they can convince someone to treat the scammer like a spouse. And because the connection forms through phones and apps, always present, always pinging, always intimate, the scam can feel more real than a warning from a friend. The technology layer here is deceptively simple, and that simplicity is the risk. Dating apps and messaging platforms are optimized for engagement and fast trust, not for identity verification at a forensic level. A profile can claim a profession, a city, and a travel schedule, and the user interface makes that claim look like part of the person. A scammer can also maintain near constant contact across time zones, using the speed and convenience of messaging to create the illusion of availability and devotion. According to Martha, the man was a San Diego architect working in Poland, an identity that conveniently explains why meeting in person is difficult, why plans keep shifting, and why financial complications might arise. The geographic distance becomes a feature of the script, not a barrier. As the relationship deepened, the scam's financial logic became more aggressive. According to Martha, the man said he couldn't access his bank account and needed her help. In many romance fraud cases, the payment rails can vary: wire transfers, gift cards, cryptocurrency, or peer-to-peer transfers, but the underlying technique is consistent. Move the victim into a payment method that is fast, hard to reverse, and emotionally framed as urgent help. Martha has not publicly detailed the specific transfer mechanisms in this case, only that she sent money multiple times, ultimately totaling $32,000. What's clear in her account is the progression. Requests that begin as exceptions become normalized, and once normalized, they become a steady drain. The other critical technology component is data. Romance scams rarely stop at money. According to Armisen, these schemes can gather personal information over months or years, and she warns that all of that information goes into the dark web, adding that victims can see their cybersecurity completely ruined and their identity stolen. In practical terms, that means the scam isn't only about what was sent, it can be about what was shared in conversation. Addresses, birthdays, photos of IDs, bank names, family details, security question answers, or even patterns of behavior that make future fraud easier. A patient scammer doesn't just extract funds, they map a target. Martha says the emotional pressure eventually became too much, and in January she cut him off. That moment when the victim finally breaks contact is often the closest thing to a security incident response in a romance scam. It's the point where the victim recognizes inconsistency, exhaustion, or manipulation and disconnects from the channel. But it can also be the point where the psychological impact hits hardest. According to Martha, her emotions were tangled. Frustration, sadness, and the sting of realizing trust was used as a weapon. When asked what she missed more, the money or the love, she stayed quiet, then said she missed the love. That answer captures why this category of fraud is so difficult to prevent with simple warnings. The victim isn't only losing money, they're losing a relationship they experienced as real. Cybersecurity experts who work with victims highlight several red flags that repeatedly appear in these cases, and in Martha's story the signals are familiar. Armisen points to 3 major warning signs. The person refuses to meet in person and always has an excuse. The person asks for money through high-risk channels like gift cards, wire transfers, or cryptocurrency, and the person attempts to isolate the victim from friends and family, sometimes by bad-mouthing them or warning the victim not to listen. This is the scammer's security strategy. Isolation reduces the chance that a third party will do reality checks, reverse image searches, or simple verification like asking for a live video call at a specific moment. From a technical perspective, those behaviors function like a social firewall bypass. When a victim is isolated, there's no external validation. When payments shift to irreversible channels, there's no practical undo button. And when the scammer keeps the relationship confined to messaging, the victim is left with text as proof, text that can be produced by anyone, anywhere, at scale. Even without advanced tools, a dedicated fraudster can run multiple victims at once, maintaining scripts, schedules, and emotional hooks like a customer support operation. The tech is not always sophisticated, but the process is. What would digital red flags look like in a case like this, without blaming the victim? Cybersecurity experts note that identity claims inside apps are not verification. A job title and a location are inputs, not evidence. Experts also warn that persistent obstacles to meeting paired with escalating money needs are not random misfortune but a pattern. Another common failure point is treating financial trouble as private relationship business rather than a security event. In legitimate scenarios, a professional with a real business typically has formal options: financial institutions, colleagues, documentation, and accountability. In scams, the story requires secrecy, speed, and emotional leverage. And then there's the investigation reality. According to the report, the San Diego County District Attorney says romance scams stole more than $1.3 million from local victims in 2023 alone, placing Martha's $32,000 loss inside a much larger pattern. The article does not confirm a specific law enforcement outcome in Martha's case, nor does it describe whether her funds were recovered or traced. In many digital fraud cases, victims are encouraged to report to relevant authorities and support channels, but outcomes depend on what payment method was used, how quickly the report is made, and whether any platforms or financial intermediaries can intervene before funds move again. Armisen emphasizes support and response over judgment. She notes that victims often don't respond well to being criticized for believing in someone they never met in person. Instead, she recommends a collaborative approach: affirm what the person feels, then investigate together, because investigation is the technical countermeasure to social engineering. The Cybercrime Support Network provides resources and support through its Fight Cybercrime website. The report also notes that AARP offers tips and a helpline staffed by trained specialists who can guide people when they're unsure whether an online relationship is legitimate. The broader context is that romance fraud is evolving alongside the platforms people use to connect. The scam doesn't require breaking into a bank when it can walk a person to the transfer button themselves. It doesn't require exploiting a software vulnerability when it can exploit loneliness, trust, and the social design of always-on communication. And as Armisen warns, the damage can go beyond money into identity compromise and long-term cybersecurity exposure. Martha's story ends where many digital fraud stories end, not with a clean resolution, but with a realization and a warning. A relationship can be authentic in feeling and still be engineered as a scam. A conversation can be constant and still be calculated. And a modern phone filled with dating apps, chat threads, and payment tools can become the entire infrastructure of a crime, built one message at a time. Cybersecurity experts recommend slowing down identity claims with verification, treating requests for money as a security red flag rather than a romantic test, and leaning on credible support networks early before shame turns an incident into a secret. For Martha, the loss was $32,000. But the more haunting loss, in her words, was the love she believed she had found.
She was seeing a future, and unfortunately it turned out to be a lie.
Oh, I'm so sorry for her.
Sorry for her.
Thank you, Sir.